They were seen, they were heard, some even made one final call, and then nothing, no struggle, no evidence, no explanation. These are cases that should have been solved, but never were. Stories of vanishings that were caught on camera, whispered their final messages, and were gone missing without a trace. Let's dive into 1 hour of the most disturbing vanishings without a trace. In the heart of Vatican City, behind the grand walls of St. Peter's Basilica, life moves to the rhythm of centuries-old tradition, quiet, sacred, and untouchable. But in the summer of 1983, that peace was shattered when a young girl from within those walls vanished, and the mystery that followed would haunt the Vatican for decades. Emanuela Orlandi was born on January 14, 1968, the fourth of 5 children in a devout Catholic family. Her father, Kiely Rodni, worked as an employee for the Vatican Bank, giving their family a rare residence inside Vatican territory, one of the most secure places on earth. Emanuela was 15 years old, cheerful, musical, and a bit shy. She loved playing the flute and attended classes at a music school in Rome. Her daily routine was predictable, safe, until June 22, 1983. That afternoon, Emanuela left her family apartment inside the Vatican for her flute lesson at the Tommaso Ludovico da Vittoria School, about a 10-minute walk away. Before class, she called her sister, saying she had been approached by a man offering work, handing out Avon Cosmetics brochures. It seemed odd, but she didn't sound alarmed. After her lesson ended at 7 p.m., she told a friend she planned to talk to that same man again, and then she disappeared. She never made it home. By nightfall, her family began calling friends, police, and Vatican officials, but the case was unlike any other, because the crime scene technically lay on Vatican, Italian, and international territory. That overlap would soon become the biggest obstacle in finding her. In the following days, posters with Emanuela's face covered Rome. Anonymous calls poured in. One caller claimed she'd been kidnapped by a group demanding the release of Mehmet Ali Acha, the man who attempted to assassinate Pope John Paul II in 1981. Another theory linked her disappearance to the Bulgarian Secret Service and Cold War espionage, a political bargaining chip involving the Vatican, Eastern Bloc agents, and even the Mafia. Her family received letters, cryptic phone calls, and promises that she was alive and would be freed soon. But as weeks turned into months, no ransom came, and no one claimed responsibility. As the years passed, the mystery of Emanuela Orlandi only grew darker and stranger. Rumors began to swirl about the Vatican, organized crime, and secret cover-ups. One theory claimed Emanuela had been taken by the Banda della Maliana, a powerful Roman crime group allegedly tied to Vatican finances and money laundering. Some said she was being used to pressure the church to repay debts owed to criminal networks. Others whispered that Vatican officials themselves knew far more than they ever admitted. In 2005, Pope John Paul II publicly mentioned Emanuela, praying for her return, the first and only pope to ever address her case. But it was Pope Benedict XVI's era when the rumors took a shocking turn. In 2012, an Italian journalist revealed documents allegedly showing Vatican officials knew Emanuela's fate and had paid for her to remain hidden. The Vatican dismissed them as fake. Then, in 2019, new leads reopened old wounds. The Orlandi family received an anonymous letter claiming Emanuela's remains could be found in the Teutonic Cemetery inside the Vatican near the tomb of a German princess. When excavations began, 2 tombs were opened. but they were empty. Each revelation only deepened the mystery, from Cold War politics and mafia ties to whispers of church cover-ups. What began as one girl's disappearance had evolved into one of the Vatican's darkest and most enduring enigmas. More than 4 decades have passed since that June evening. Emanuela Orlandi's family still waits for answers. Aging parents, hopeful siblings, and generations of investigators chasing ghosts through the corridors of power. Her story is no longer just about one missing teenager. It's about secrecy, silence, and the uncomfortable truth that even the smallest tragedy can expose the deepest cracks in an institution built on faith. The Vatican remains silent, and Emanuela's fate, whether she was a victim of politics, power, or coincidence, remains one of the most chilling mysteries of the 20th century. Because in the city of God, even light can cast the darkest shadows. In the quiet town of Barron, Wisconsin, population just over 3,000, everyone knew everyone. It was the kind of place where people left their doors unlocked and strangers stood out. But on the morning of October 15th, 2018, that sense of safety was shattered forever. Jayme Lynn Closs, just 13 years old, was a bright, kind, and soft-spoken girl who lived with her parents, James and Denise Closs, in a modest home on Highway 8. She was described by teachers as gentle and thoughtful, a girl who loved her friends, pets, and dancing. Her life was simple until one night when everything changed. At 12:53 a.m., the Barron County Sheriff's Department received a chilling 911 call from Denise Closs's cell phone. The dispatcher heard shouting and then silence. When police arrived minutes later, they found the front door blasted open. Inside the house were the bodies of James and Denise Closs, both shot dead. Jayme was nowhere to be found. Within hours, an Amber Alert was issued nationwide. Posters with Jayme's photo spread across the U.S. A young girl with bright eyes and an innocent smile. Hundreds of volunteers combed through nearby woods and fields. The FBI joined the search, investigating every lead, every vehicle, every possible suspect. But days turned into weeks. There were no witnesses, no ransom demands, and no trace of Jayme. Theories multiplied: a kidnapping, a family feud, a stalker, but nothing fit. For nearly 3 months, the case went cold. Then, on January 10th, 2019, everything changed. 88 days after Jayme vanished, Jean Nutter was walking her dog in the small town of Gosden, Wisconsin, and noticed a thin girl running toward her. The girl grabbed her and said just one sentence: "My name is Jayme Closs." The woman called 911, and moments later, officers surrounded a nearby cabin. Inside, they arrested 21-year-old Jake Thomas Patterson, a man no one had ever suspected, a quiet factory worker who had no connection to the Closs family. When investigators questioned him, the horrifying truth came out. Patterson had seen Jayme just once, while she was getting on her school bus. He didn't know her, had never spoken to her, but became obsessed. He planned the attack for weeks, choosing the early morning to avoid witnesses. He shaved his head and removed identifying marks from his car to avoid being caught. On the night of October 15th, he parked outside Jayme's home, shot her father at the door, then forced his way inside and killed her mother before abducting Jayme at gunpoint. He drove her 70 miles north to a secluded cabin, hidden deep in the woods. For 88 days, Jayme was kept captive, under constant threat, often locked beneath his bed when visitors came. But she never gave up hope. When Patterson left for work that January morning, Jayme finally saw her chance. She pushed aside the barriers, ran wearing James's oversized shoes through the 18-degree snow, and found help. Her courage ended one of the most haunting manhunts in modern memory. For weeks, the public struggled to comprehend the story. How could a stranger choose a random girl from a bus stop and go to such violent extremes to take her? Some questioned whether Patterson had acted alone. Others believed he had stalked her for longer than he admitted. But investigators confirmed his confession matched the evidence. It was a random act of evil, carefully planned and horrifyingly executed. In May 2019, Jake Patterson pleaded guilty to 2 counts of first-degree intentional homicide and 1 count of kidnapping. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Jayme's bravery in escaping not only solved her own case, it gave hope to families across the country who still wait for answers. In a world of disappearances that end in tragedy, Jayme Closs's story stands apart, not for the horror she endured, but for the strength she showed. She became the face of resilience, proof that even in the darkest situations, survival is possible. The small town of Barron will never forget the night it lost its sense of safety, because sometimes, even after months of silence, the missing don't just return as victims, they return as survivors. On August 5th, 2022, 16-year-old Kiely Rodni left home for what should have been an ordinary night with friends. She was smart, responsible, and well-loved, a senior at Truckee Charter High School, just weeks away from starting college. Born and raised in Truckee, California, near Lake Tahoe, Kiely was known for her bright smile, musical talent, and independent spirit. That evening, she told her mother, Lindsay, she was heading to a large graduation party at the Prosser family campground, a wooded area near a reservoir popular with teens. She promised to be home by midnight. But Kiely never came home. The party drew more than 200 young people, some friends, others strangers from nearby towns. There was loud music, alcohol, and poor cell service. Around 12:30 a.m., Kiely texted her mom saying she'd be leaving soon. Just 3 minutes later, her phone last pinged near the edge of Prosser Creek Reservoir, and then went silent. The next morning, August 6th, Kiely's car, a silver 2013 Honda CR-V, was missing, and so was she. Her parents reported her disappearance immediately, and the search began. Within hours, volunteers, drones, helicopters, and divers were scouring the vast wilderness. The entire community of Truckee united, but days turned into weeks with no trace of Kiely or her vehicle. Her friends insisted she wasn't the kind to just run away. Investigators explored every angle, an abduction, an accident, or something more sinister. Meanwhile, online sleuths fueled speculation, spreading rumors and false leads that only deepened the chaos. Then, 16 days later, came the twist that shocked everyone. On August 21st, 2022, a volunteer dive team called Adventures with Purpose joined the search. Using sonar, they scanned the very lake near where Kiely's phone last pinged, just 300 yards from the party site. Within hours, they made a chilling discovery. A vehicle lay upside down beneath 14 feet of water. Inside were human remains. The license plate confirmed it, Kiely's Honda CR-V. Authorities pulled the car from the lake, and days later, they confirmed what everyone feared. The remains were Kiely's. The community was stunned. After weeks of exhaustive searching, she had been right there, beneath the surface. Investigators later ruled her death an accidental drowning, suggesting she may have become disoriented or tired after the party and mistakenly driven into the water. There were no signs of foul play, but not everyone agreed. Locals questioned how her car went unnoticed for so long in a lake that had already been searched. Some pointed to the steep, hidden shoreline, nearly impossible to reach without headlights. Even members of Adventures with purpose suggested the car's position seemed unusual, as if it had been placed there later. For Kiely's family, those unanswered questions remain unbearable. Her mother's final words to her, "I love you, be safe," echo through every interview, every vigil, every memory. Kiely Rodni's story is one of heartbreak, confusion, and mystery. It began as a search for a missing girl, became a nationwide obsession, and ended with a discovery that only deepened the questions. On a cold November night in 2012, 26-year-old Emma Fillipoff stood barefoot outside the Empress Hotel in downtown Victoria, British Columbia. She appeared disoriented, clutching her shoes, her hair damp from the rain. Within hours, she would vanish without a trace, leaving behind one of Canada's most chilling, unsolved disappearances. Emma Fillipoff was born on January 6, 1986, in Perth, Ontario. She grew up in a loving home, described by family and friends as free-spirited, artistic, and deeply sensitive. She loved poetry, nature, and photography, someone who saw beauty in everything, but also carried a quiet weight of introspection. In 2011, she moved to Victoria, British Columbia, seeking independence and inspiration by the sea. In the months leading up to her disappearance, Emma's life began to shift. She had been staying at a women's shelter called Sandy Merriman House, coming and going as she pleased, sometimes sleeping outdoors or in temporary housing. Staff later described her as kind but increasingly anxious and paranoid in the weeks before she vanished. On November 28, 2012, Emma was last seen multiple times throughout the day. That morning, she bought a prepaid cell phone and a $200 prepaid credit card. Later, around 7 p.m., police encountered her outside the Empress Hotel after receiving a call about a woman behaving strangely. Officers spoke with her for about 45 minutes. She told them she was fine and didn't pose a threat to herself or others. They let her go. That was the last confirmed sighting of Emma Fillipoff. When her mother, Shelley, arrived in Victoria later that night after rushing from Ontario upon hearing her daughter was in distress, Emma was already gone. Her vanishing act seemed impossible. Her red Mazda MPV 1993 van was later found in the Chateau Victoria parking lot with all her belongings still inside. Her laptop, clothes, and neatly packed journals. It was as if she had intended to leave, but never got the chance. Over the years, countless theories have tried to explain what happened to Emma Fillipoff, but none provide closure. The first and most discussed is that Emma experienced a sudden mental health crisis. In her final days, she reportedly believed someone was following her. Friends and staff at the shelter recalled her growing fear and confusion. Some speculate she fled voluntarily, seeking isolation or a fresh start under a new identity. But if that were the case, why leave behind her money, her car, and everything she owned? Another theory points toward foul play. Several witnesses claim to have seen Emma after the night she vanished, though none of these sightings were ever verified. One man, known as the Green Shirt Guy, reportedly spotted on May 27, 2014, later walked into a Gastown, BC convenience store claiming that he knew Emma and that she was his girlfriend. However, when questioned by the police, he denied any connection. His strange and inconsistent behavior only deepened suspicions that Emma may have met with foul play after leaving the Empress Hotel. There's also the theory of misadventure. Victoria's waterfront area is rugged and cold, with hidden pathways leading to the ocean. Some believe Emma, in a confused or distressed state, may have wandered off and succumbed to the elements. Yet, extensive searches by police and volunteers turned up nothing. No clothing, no remains, no trace. Her mother has never stopped searching, posting flyers, and following leads across the country for over a decade. Despite hundreds of reported sightings, not one has led to her. Emma's story feels like a dream fading into mist. One moment she was there, vulnerable and afraid. The next, she was gone, a young woman with a gentle soul and creative spirit, swallowed by silence on a rainy November night. What happened to Emma Fillipoff after she walked away from the Empress Hotel? Did she choose to vanish? Or did someone take that choice from her? To this day, no one knows where Emma went or why. It was December 13th, 2009, when 30-year-old Stephen Koecher vanished without a trace in Henderson, Nevada. And more than a decade later, his disappearance remains one of the most baffling mysteries in America. Stephen was born on November 1st, 1979, in Amarillo, Texas, and raised in St. George, Utah. Friends described him as polite, dependable, and deeply religious. After serving a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, he earned a communications degree from Dixie State University and briefly worked for a local newspaper. But by late 2009, Stephen's life was in transition. He had lost steady employment, was struggling financially, and was searching for new opportunities. Still, his family said he remained positive and hopeful about rebuilding his life. On December 10th, Stephen left his home in St. George and drove south toward Las Vegas. Along the way, he stopped at a gas station in Mesquite, Nevada, where surveillance footage showed him acting completely normal. Over the next few days, his movements became increasingly mysterious. By December 13th, his white 2003 Chevy Cavalier was found abandoned at the end of a cul-de-sac in the 2600 block of Savannah Springs Avenue in the Sun City Anthem residential neighborhood in Henderson, nearly 120 miles from home. Inside the locked vehicle, police found Stephen's personal belongings, a wrapped Christmas gift, clothes, and his phone charger. Nothing suggested foul play, but what caught investigators' attention was the neighborhood security footage. Around 11:54 a.m., Stephen was seen parking his car, getting out, and walking calmly down the street, carrying a folder. He appeared purposeful, not lost, frightened, or in distress. After that short clip, he was never seen again. Detectives were puzzled. Stephen had no known friends, relatives, or business connections in the Henderson area. His family said he hadn't mentioned any plans to travel there. There was no activity on his phone or bank accounts after that day, and no signs of a struggle near his car. It was as if he had simply vanished into thin air. Investigators began retracing his steps in the days before he disappeared. Stephen had reportedly been driving long distances, sometimes hundreds of miles across Utah and Nevada, for reasons no one fully understood. He may have been looking for work, delivering resumes, or visiting potential employers. Given that he was carrying a folder when last seen, some believe he was in Henderson for something related to a job opportunity. But as time passed with no leads, theories grew more uncertain. One theory suggests that Stephen met with foul play, possibly lured to the neighborhood under false pretenses, yet there's no sign of violence or any evidence that he encountered danger there. Another theory is that Stephen voluntarily disappeared, perhaps feeling overwhelmed by financial pressure and life changes, but his family rejects this idea, saying Stephen had strong faith, close family ties, and clear plans for the holidays. He was even scheduled to attend church the next day. Others believe Stephen may have wandered into the nearby desert and succumbed to exposure. However, extensive searches involving police, volunteers, and dogs found no sign of him. The desert can hide many secrets, but even then, Total disappearance without evidence is rare. Perhaps the most haunting detail is that short clip of Stephen calmly walking down a sunny suburban street, seemingly with purpose and with no hint of what was about to happen. No one followed him, no one heard a sound. And yet within moments, he was gone. His family continues to seek answers, holding on to the hope that one day the truth will emerge. Was Stephen meeting someone? Did something unexpected happen after he disappeared from the camera's view? Or did he walk away, leaving behind a life he no longer felt he could fix? Whatever the answer, one thing is certain: Stephen's case is a haunting reminder that sometimes, even in plain sight, a person can vanish without a trace. On the morning of September 14th, 2007, 14-year-old Andrew Gosden left his home in Doncaster, England, and was never seen again. His case has since become one of the most haunting child disappearances in modern Britain, filled with unanswered questions and chilling possibilities. Andrew was born on July 10, 1993, in Doncaster, South Yorkshire, England. He was a quiet, highly intelligent teenager. He was a straight-A student at Macaulay Catholic High School, gifted in mathematics and fascinated by technology and video games. He lived with his parents, Kevin and Glenys, and his older sister, Charlotte. Described as bright but introverted, Andrew preferred time alone in his room to social activities. Despite that, his family said he was happy and had shown no signs of distress before the day he vanished. That Friday began like any other school day. Andrew woke up, got dressed in his uniform, and left home around 8 a.m. But he never made it to school. Instead, he walked to a cash machine, withdrew £200 from his savings account, and returned home briefly to change into casual clothes. Then, carrying his wallet, keys, and his favorite PlayStation Portable, he walked to the Doncaster train station and bought a one-way ticket to London. He declined a return ticket, even though it cost only slightly more. Witnesses later confirmed he boarded the 9:35 a.m. train. At around 11:20 a.m., CCTV footage captured Andrew arriving at London's King's Cross station. He appeared calm and collected, blending in with the morning crowd. He was alone, wearing black jeans and a black Slipknot band t-shirt. That was the last confirmed sighting of him. From that moment, Andrew seemed to vanish into the vastness of the city. When Andrew didn't return home that evening, his parents were immediately alarmed. They called his school, only to learn he hadn't attended classes. A missing person report was filed that night, launching a massive search effort. Police distributed flyers, searched parks and hostels, and reviewed security footage across London. But aside from the King's Cross video, there was nothing. No activity on his bank account, no phone, no online communication. It was as if the trail simply ended there. Over the years, investigators and the Gosden family have struggled to make sense of Andrew's motives. Why would a responsible, academically gifted 14-year-old travel alone to London with no plan to return? One theory is that Andrew went to London to attend a concert or visit friends he'd met online. He was a fan of rock and metal bands, and several groups, including Slipknot and 30 Seconds to Mars, were performing in London around that time. Perhaps he wanted an adventure or a brief escape from his quiet life in Doncaster. But if that was the case, what happened next? Another theory suggests he may have met someone, possibly someone he'd communicated with secretly online. In 2018, police received a report of an online conversation where someone claimed to have met Andrew shortly after his disappearance. However, this lead ultimately went cold. There's also the troubling possibility that Andrew fell victim to foul play. London is a massive city with thousands of missing persons cases every year. It's possible he encountered danger after arriving, someone who took advantage of his youth and vulnerability. Despite extensive investigations, no concrete evidence has surfaced to support or disprove this. Andrew's family has never stopped searching. They've kept his room as it was, hoping for his return. Over the years, they've worked tirelessly with police and the media, even creating age progression images to show what Andrew might look like as an adult. Yet, despite public appeals and new leads, there's still no trace of him. Why did Andrew travel to London that day? Did he plan to come home? Or was he running towards something no one knew about? Somewhere out there lies the truth. But until it's found, the case of Andrew Gosden remains one of the UK's most enduring and heartbreaking mysteries. Brandon Victor Swanson was a 19-year-old college student from Marshall, Minnesota. Born on January 30th, 1989, he was known as smart, polite, and independent. A young man with quiet confidence and big dreams for the future. He was studying wind energy technology at Minnesota West Community and Technical College, commuting daily from his parents' home in Marshall. Friends described him as easygoing, the kind of person who always kept his cool, even in stressful situations. But on one night in May 2008, that calm voice would be heard for the very last time over a 47-minute phone call that still chills everyone who hears it. It was May 14th. 2008. Classes had just ended for the semester. Brandon decided to celebrate with friends in Canby, a small town about 30 miles northwest of Marshall. He left home that evening around 8 p.m., saying he'd be back later that night. Witnesses confirmed he'd had a few drinks, but nothing that suggested he was out of control. Shortly after midnight, Brandon began driving home, but instead of heading south toward Marshall, he somehow took a wrong turn down a rural gravel road. His car, a green Chevy Lumina, became stuck in a ditch. At 1:54 a.m., he called his parents, Brian and Annette Swanson, asking for help. He wasn't panicked, just frustrated. He told them he thought he was near the town of Lind, about 10 minutes away. They got in their truck and began driving toward him, flashing their headlights to help him spot them. That's when things took a chilling turn. Brandon said he could see their lights in the distance, but they couldn't see his. Both sides kept flashing, trying to signal each other, but something was wrong. They weren't in the same place. Eventually, Brandon told his father he'd start walking toward town to meet them. He stayed on the phone the entire time. For nearly 47 minutes, the call stayed connected. His father described hearing Brandon's steady voice, the sound of gravel crunching under his feet, and then suddenly, a startled shout, "Oh, shh!" Then, silence. The call didn't disconnect, it just went dead. Brandon never said another word. His parents kept calling his name. No response. Authorities immediately began searching, using cell tower data to trace his last signal, which came from an area near the tiny town of Taunton, 25 miles from where he thought he was. His car was later found there, undamaged and with no signs of struggle. Search dogs tracked his scent to the edge of the Yellow Medicine River, and then across it, before losing the trail. It appeared he'd made it to the other side, but after that, the trail vanished completely. Some investigators believe Brandon accidentally fell into the river and drowned, but extensive searches, including sonar and divers, never recovered his body. Others think he may have succumbed to hypothermia after becoming disoriented in the dark fields. Yet, there's another theory, one that suggests he made it farther than anyone thinks. Several locals believe he could have reached a nearby road and encountered someone or something that caused his disappearance. Despite annual searches and over a decade of investigation, not a single piece of evidence, no phone, wallet, or clothing has ever been found. Brandon Swanson's last words still echo through time. "Can you see me?" A call that should have led to safety ended in silence, and a mystery that haunts Minnesota to this day. Did Brandon lose his way in the dark that night, or did someone find him before he could make it home? Until answers surface, one thing remains certain: the phone may have gone quiet, but the mystery has never stopped ringing. She was only 9 years old. Her name was Asha Degree, known in her hometown of Shelby, North Carolina, as Shelby's sweetheart. On February 14th, 2000, while most children were asleep in warm beds, Asha slipped quietly into the night and vanished into the storm. That Sunday had been ordinary. Asha went to Macedonia Missionary Baptist Church with her family. Her cousin later remembered seeing her ushering proudly, smiling in her white dress. No one imagined it would be the last time they'd see her. Around 2:30 a.m., Asha's father checked in on his children. Both were asleep, but by 6:15 a.m., when her parents woke up, her bed was empty. Her backpack, a few clothes, and her favorite book were gone. Truck drivers later reported seeing a small girl walking along Highway 18 in the freezing rain. They turned back to check on her, but by the time they did, she had disappeared into the darkness. For 25 years, investigators from the FBI, the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation, and the Cleveland County Sheriff's Office have searched for answers. 17 months after her disappearance, in August 2001, a construction crew found a black plastic bag buried along Highway 18 near Morganton, more than 30 miles away from where Asha was last seen. Inside were her school supplies and her backpack, wrapped inside 2 sealed garbage bags. For years, the evidence led nowhere. Then, in 2024, investigators announced a breakthrough. New DNA testing linked items inside the bag to members of the Dedman family, a Cleveland County family living near where Asha disappeared. According to court documents, a hair stem found on Asha's undershirt matched Annalie Victoria Dedman Ramirez, who was only 13 years old at the time. 2 of his sisters were teenagers back then, just 15 and 16. Because of their ages, investigators now believe adult assistance was involved, possibly from their parents, Roy and Connie Dedman. In September 2024, the FBI and sheriff's deputies executed multiple search warrants on Dedman-owned properties along Cherryville Road. They also found traces linking another man, Russell Underhill, to the same evidence recovered from Asha's belongings. For the first time in nearly a quarter century, investigators said publicly what Asha's family had feared all along. "We now believe Asha Degree was killed and her body was concealed." This revelation has shattered the hope that once kept the community breathing. Asha would have turned 35 years old in August 2025. Billboards still line the highways, her bright eyes watching over the town that refuses to forget her. Her mother once said, "Every time it rains, I picture her out there, walking into that storm." 2 decades of silence, and a truth only now beginning to surface. That's the story of Asha Degree, the child who walked into the darkness and never came back. Maura Murray was born on May 4th, 1982, in Hanson, Massachusetts, the youngest of 5 children. Bright, athletic, and determined, she excelled in school and track before pursuing nursing at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. At just 21 years old, she seemed to have a promising future until her sudden disappearance in February 2004 turned her life into one of the nation's most enduring mysteries. On the evening of February 9th, 2004, Maura abruptly left her dorm at UMass Amherst. She emailed her professors, claiming she would be away for a week due to a family emergency, though no such emergency existed. Instead, she packed personal belongings, withdrew cash from an ATM, and drove off in her father's old Saturn sedan. By nightfall, she was several hours north in rural New Hampshire. At around 7:30 p.m., her car skidded off a snowy road near Haverhill. A nearby resident witnessed the crash and called the police, but when officers arrived minutes later, Maura was gone. Inside the vehicle, investigators found her belongings, an open alcohol container, and printed directions to Vermont. Yet there were no footprints in the snow leading away from the car, no signs of a struggle, and no indication of where she had gone. Search dogs, helicopters, and volunteers combed the area, but no trace of Maura was ever recovered. The disappearance quickly gained national attention. A young woman vanished within minutes of a crash, leaving behind a trail of evidence, but no clear answers. Over the years, multiple theories have tried to explain what happened. One possibility is abduction by a stranger. In such a remote area, someone could have stopped under the guise of offering help. The narrow window between her last confirmed sighting and the arrival of police makes this chilling scenario plausible. Another theory is that Maura staged her own disappearance. She had been struggling academically, faced disciplinary issues, and had tensions in her relationship. Some believe she intended to leave everything behind and start over. Yet, despite extensive investigation, no proof has ever surfaced that she began a new life elsewhere. A third possibility is that she succumbed to the elements. It was a frigid February night, and if she left the car disoriented or intoxicated, she could have wandered into the woods. But despite thorough searches, no remains or belongings were found. Some have speculated that someone closer to her life may have been involved. Rumors suggested she might have been traveling to meet a friend or confidant, raising questions about whether that person held back the full truth. What makes the case so haunting is the complete absence of answers. The crash was real, the clues were real, but everything after that moment remains an unsettling mystery. Years later, the disappearance of Maura Murray endures as one of America's most baffling cold cases. How could a 21-year-old nursing student vanish from a rural road within minutes, leaving her car locked and belongings behind? Was she escaping her old life, the victim of a crime, or lost to the elements? To this day, the truth about what happened to Maura Murray remains unknown. On March 21, 1998, 23-year-old Amy Lynn Bradley vanished while vacationing with her family aboard the Royal Caribbean cruise ship Rhapsody of the Seas. The trip had been won by her father, Ron, as an all-expenses-paid prize from his employer, making it a dream vacation for the Bradleys, who were from Chesterfield, Virginia. Amy, described as independent, athletic, and deeply close to her family, was looking forward to the getaway. On the night of March 23rd, Amy and her brother, Brad, spent time at the ship's dance club before returning to their cabin around 1:30 a.m. Brad recalled chatting briefly before they both went to bed. Around 5:30 a.m., Ron woke up and saw Amy resting on the balcony. Less than an hour later, when he checked again, she was gone. Her shoes, cigarettes, and lighter were still inside the cabin, suggesting she hadn't planned to be away for long. At first, her family thought she might be wandering the ship, but as hours passed, concern turned to panic. Despite their pleas, the crew did not immediately organize a full search or stop passengers from leaving when the ship docked in Curaçao. By the time authorities were contacted, critical hours had already passed. Amy was never seen on the ship again, yet over the years, chilling and fragmented reports suggested she may not have left by choice. Witnesses recalled seeing her with crew members shortly before her disappearance, raising suspicions that she may have been targeted. A U.S. Navy sailor later claimed he encountered her in a Curacao brothel where she allegedly begged for help before being led away. Others claim to have seen a woman resembling Amy on a beach and even in a department store. None of these sightings was ever confirmed, but they fueled the painful belief that Amy may have been taken and forced into a life far from the one she knew. Another theory is that Amy accidentally fell overboard, a conclusion often cited by cruise lines in missing passenger cases, but her family strongly disputes this idea. Amy was a trained lifeguard and a strong swimmer. And the fact that her belongings remained in the cabin indicates she hadn't planned to leave for long. They are convinced it is highly unlikely she slipped or wandered near the ship's railings in the dark. There is also speculation that someone she met on the ship lured her away. Crew members reportedly showed unusual interest in Amy, and one even admitted to asking about her whereabouts after she vanished. If true, it raises troubling concerns about the safety of passengers aboard cruise liners and the lack of oversight in international waters. What makes Amy's case especially haunting is that she is not the only person to disappear under mysterious circumstances at sea. Her story underscores how crimes in international waters can be overlooked, delayed, or left unresolved. For more than 25 years, the disappearance of Amy Lynn Bradley remains one of the most chilling mysteries linked to cruise travel. Was she taken against her will, hidden in unfamiliar places far from home? Or does the truth lie somewhere in between, lost to missed opportunities and unanswered questions? Jason Jolkowski was born on June 24, 1981, in Grand Island, Nebraska. His family later moved to Omaha, where Jason and his younger brother Michael grew up in a typical suburban household with their loving parents, Kelly and Jim. Jason was known as a kind, quiet young man, though he had a learning disability that sometimes made it difficult for him to concentrate and focus, and his extreme shyness made eye contact hard for him. Through these circumstances, Jason was also remarkably intelligent. He lived at home while attending community college and worked part-time at a local radio station with dreams of one day building a career in broadcasting. On the morning of June 13, 2001, Jason's routine day suddenly turned into one of Nebraska's greatest mysteries. 19 years old at the time, Jason was scheduled to work a shift at a nearby fast food restaurant. With his car in the shop, he arranged to meet a co-worker at Benson High School, just 7 blocks, or about a 15-minute walk from his house. Around 10:45 a.m., a neighbor saw him outside, briefly helping move garbage cans into the garage. After that, Jason began walking toward the high school. He never arrived. His co-worker waited, but Jason never showed. He didn't pick up his paycheck, never returned home, and never contacted anyone again. Police launched a massive search of the neighborhood, but no trace of Jason was found. He seemed to vanish in broad daylight along a short residential walk without leaving behind a single clue. No personal belongings were recovered. No witnesses came forward. No surveillance footage ever surfaced. It was as if Jason simply disappeared into thin air. Theories about what happened have haunted investigators and his family for more than 2 decades. One possibility is abduction. Despite it being daytime, Jason's route was quiet enough for someone to intercept him and force him into a vehicle unnoticed. Others wonder if foul play came from someone he knew, though no evidence has ever supported that. A voluntary disappearance has also been suggested, but Jason's family strongly disputes this. He had money left untouched in his bank account, a good relationship with his parents and brother, and never gave any sign of wanting to leave. To this day, Jason Jolkowski's case is considered the most baffling disappearance in Nebraska's history. His story has been featured in true crime discussions and even dedicated podcast episodes, keeping his memory and the mystery alive for new audiences. Jason's family has never stopped searching for answers. For them, it remains unthinkable that a young man, walking just 7 blocks to meet a co-worker, could vanish without leaving a single trace. What happened to Jason on that June morning in 2001 is still unknown, and the silence surrounding his disappearance continues to weigh heavily on everyone who knew him. With these stories, we end 1 hour of the most disturbing vanishings ever recorded. Cases without answers, without closure, and without explanation. They remain open, unresolved, and echoing across time, reminding us how quickly a person can slip from sight and how silence can become the only clue left behind. This is Vanished Stories, where every disappearance is never forgotten.